Ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you a question. What's at the center of your life? Is it money? Is it success? Is it your business? Your relationships? Your goals? Because whatever's at the center, that is what drives everything else. What you center your life around determines your direction. This isn't just a motivational quote. It's a spiritual law, a fundamental truth that governs how your life unfolds. Every person, whether they realize it or not, has something at the core of their existence. That core becomes the lens through which they view every decision, every relationship, every challenge, and every opportunity. It defines their values, shapes their habits, and ultimately sets the course of their destiny. When your life is centered around the wrong thing, your direction becomes unstable. Think about it like the wheel of a car. If the axle is bent or misaligned, you can have brand new tires, the best engine, the cleanest interior, but you're still going to drift. The same is true in life. You can be talented, hardworking, well-connected, and full of ambition, but if what you're revolving around is off, your life will always veer off course. Some people center their lives around money, and while there's nothing wrong with money, it's a tool, a resource. Problems arise when it becomes the compass. If every decision is filtered through how much money it will make, rather than what is right, what is wise, or what is godly, you're no longer being led by purpose. You're being driven by greed. Money becomes the master, and before long, people start sacrificing their values, their relationships, even their health, just to chase something that can never satisfy their soul. Others center their lives around people. Again, relationships are vital. No one was made to walk alone. But when the approval of others becomes the center of your life, you'll find yourself constantly adjusting who you are just to fit into the mold of who someone else wants you to be. You'll live for likes, live for attention, live for acceptance, and end up losing your identity in the process. You'll be directed by opinions rather than convictions, and you'll be led not by your calling, but by whatever keeps the peace in the moment. Still others center their lives around achievement. The next goal, the next win, the next level. And while ambition is powerful, when it becomes the center, it becomes a prison. You become addicted to productivity. You can't rest. You can't be still. You can't celebrate the present because you're always chasing the future. And when you achieve something, the celebration is short-lived because now you need something else to feel valuable again. It becomes a treadmill of performance that never leads to peace. But here's the thing, none of those things, money, people, success, are inherently bad. In fact, they're often blessings, but they make terrible centers. They were never designed to carry the weight of your life. They're too fragile, too inconsistent, too temporary. And when they fail you, and they will, you'll find yourself disoriented and discouraged, wondering where things went wrong. That's why centering your life around God is not just the right thing to do. It's the wise thing to do because God is unchanging. He is consistent. He is eternal. When He is your center, your direction becomes clear, even when the path isn't. You start to move from confusion to clarity, not because life is easy, but because you're no longer led by shifting emotions or unstable circumstances. You're grounded in something greater than you. You're anchored in truth, not trends. When God is at the center, your priorities shift. What used to consume you starts to lose its grip. You begin making decisions based on purpose, not pressure. You stop chasing what doesn't matter and start focusing on what lasts. You stop reacting and start responding. Your direction becomes intentional, focused, and aligned with a higher calling. And here's the beautiful part. When God is truly at the center, everything else starts to fall into its rightful place. You stop putting the weight of your worth on your performance. You stop needing people to validate what God already confirmed. You stop striving for peace and start living in it. You begin to build a life that isn't just successful by worldly standards, but significant by eternal standards. Centering your life around God is not a passive decision. It's not a one-time prayer or a moment of inspiration. It's a daily alignment. Just like a GPS needs to calibrate to find the right route, your soul needs to recalibrate regularly to stay in sync with divine direction. It requires intention, attention, and surrender. Because in a world full of distractions and demands, it's easy to drift. And if you're not careful, you can wake up one day successful in all the wrong things, simply because you had the wrong center. What you revolve around shapes your rhythms. What you fix your focus on determines your future. If God is not the center, then your life is being shaped by something else, something less, something temporary, something unstable. And as long as that's the case, your direction will always feel uncertain. God is not a part of your life. He must be the foundation. That's a truth many people overlook. We live in a world that loves to compartmentalize. We put our lives into categories: family, career, finances, health, relationships, and for some, faith. And for many people, God ends up as just one of those categories. He's someone they call on during a crisis, someone they think about on Sundays, someone they fit into their schedule if there's time. But God was never meant to be a piece of your life. He was meant to be the source of it. Treating God like an accessory instead of the architect is where so many people go wrong. You can't build a stable life on unstable ground. You can't build something eternal on temporary values. When God is just a part, your life becomes segmented. You operate with divided priorities, split focus, and mixed motivations. But when God becomes the foundation, every area of your life starts to align. Your values, your decisions, your ambitions. Everything flows from that one source. Let's get real about Aichi. If your business is thriving, but your spiritual life is dry, you're building a kingdom without a king. If your calendar is full, but your heart is empty, you've gained the world and lost your soul in the process. When God is not the foundation, you're building success that may impress others but cannot sustain you. It might look good on the outside, but when the pressure comes, when the storm hits, it all falls apart because the foundation is weak. Now, when we talk about God being the foundation, we're not talking about adding a few spiritual quotes to your vision board or playing worship music in the background while you work. We're talking about building every part of your life on His truth. His word becomes your blueprint. His wisdom becomes your guidance. His presence becomes your peace. You stop making decisions based on emotions or trends, and you start making them based on His principles. When God is the foundation, you no longer hustle just to survive. You operate from a place of calling and confidence. You're not chasing success to feel valuable. You're bringing value because you know you were created for a purpose. Your business becomes a ministry. Your relationships become sacred. Your time becomes intentional. Everything takes on new meaning because now it's all rooted in something eternal. Some people wonder why their lives feel shaky, why they're overwhelmed, anxious, or exhausted. And often the reason is that they're building on sand. That sand might be good intentions, temporary motivation, or popular advice. But if it's not God, it won't hold up. You can't build a skyscraper on a foundation made for a shed. If you want to grow, if you want to expand, if you want to go higher, you need a foundation that can handle it. That foundation is God. This isn't just about success, it's about sustainability. When God is your foundation, you don't collapse when adversity comes. You don't panic when plans fall apart. You may bend, but you won't break because you're rooted in something deeper than circumstances. You're grounded in truth, not trends. And you're empowered by grace, not just grit. God as the foundation means He has the first word and the final authority. It means your goals are filtered through His will. Your relationships are shaped by his love. Your habits are aligned with his character. You're not just inviting God to bless your plans. You're surrendering to his plan. And let's be clear, his plan is always better than yours. His ways are higher. His wisdom is perfect. And when you build your life on him, you're building something that lasts. A true fulfillment comes from purpose, not possessions. That's a principle most people don't learn until they've already exhausted themselves chasing what doesn't satisfy. Our culture pushes the lie that more stuff equals more happiness. More cars, more clothes, more followers, more zeros in the bank account. That's supposed to be the formula for a meaningful life. But the truth is, possessions might bring comfort. They might create convenience, but they will never bring lasting fulfillment. They were never designed to. People spend years trying to acquire what they think will make them feel complete. They grind to climb ladders, buy things they don't need to impress people they don't even like, only to wake up empty. That's because fulfillment isn't something you can purchase. It's something you walk in when you're aligned with your purpose. Purpose is what fuels you when the money's not enough. Purpose is what wakes you up with clarity and puts you to bed with peace. Purpose is what gives pain meaning and makes the grind worth it. There are millionaires who are miserable. There are influencers who are depressed. There are successful people by the world's standards who are quietly falling apart on the inside. Why? Because possessions can never satisfy a purpose-shaped void. You were not created to consume. You were created to contribute. And until you discover why you were placed on this earth, nothing you accumulate will ever be enough. Purpose is spiritual. It's not something you invent. It's something you uncover. It's already written. You don't need to chase it. You need to connect to the one who authored it. When you center your life around God, he reveals purpose not as a vague idea, but as a divine assignment. You begin to see that your gifts, your passions, even your pain, they're all part of something bigger than you. Suddenly, what you do starts to matter in a whole new way. And here's the paradox. The moment you stop chasing possessions and start pursuing purpose, the right resources begin to show up. Why? Because purpose attracts provision. When you're walking in your assignment, heaven backs you up. What you need begins to flow. Not because you're hustling harder, because you're aligned with what God is blessing. You don't have to manipulate, compete, or compromise. You move with integrity, knowing that God funds what he favors. Possessions are temporary. They depreciate. They fade. They break. But purpose compounds. It multiplies you. Purpose builds legacy. It impacts others. It transforms lives. That's why fulfillment comes from it, because it reaches beyond self. It's not about how much you can get. It's about how much you give, how much you can build, how much you can steward. That's where joy lies. Not in what you own, but in who you serve and what you're called to do. People who live with purpose are not exempt from challenges, but they handle them differently. They're not thrown off by obstacles because they understand that their calling is bigger than their comfort. They don't quit when it gets hard because they're not just working for a paycheck. They're living out a mission. Their success isn't measured in stuff. It's measured in obedience, impact, and alignment. Possessions can be blessings, but they are terrible identities. If your worth is tied to what you own, then your sense of self will rise and fall with your bank account, your wardrobe, or your title. That's why people with everything still feel like nothing, because what they've built is wide, but not deep. Real fulfillment comes when your life is rooted in something that doesn't rust, expire, or go out of style. It comes when your day-to-day is infused with meaning, when even the mundane is part of something miraculous, when you know that your life is making a difference. Purpose is not reserved for preachers, pastors, or public figures. Everyone has a divine assignment. You don't need a stage You need surrender. You don't need a million followers. You need focus. You don't need to wait for a sign. You need to obey what you already know. Because the sooner you step into purpose, the sooner you step into fulfillment. The self-made success collapses without divine alignment. That phrase cuts through the noise of modern ambition and gets to the core of what really matters. In today's world, we glorify the idea of being self-made, as if the highest badge of honor is building something all on your own. And while that sounds impressive, it's also incredibly dangerous, because success that's built in isolation, without spiritual alignment, without divine purpose, without God at the foundation, it might rise fast, but it won't last. People hustle, grind, and sacrifice everything for a version of success that looks good on paper but doesn't hold up in reality. They burn out trying to build platforms, companies, empires, and sometimes they succeed. But if God isn't in it, it's fragile. The truth is, anything you build apart from God will eventually have to be sustained without Him. And if you weren't created to carry it in your own strength, it will crush you. Alignment is more important than achievement. You can have the right vision at the wrong time or the right idea with the wrong motive, and it still won't produce fruits. Divine alignment means you're moving with God's direction, on His timing, with His guidance. It's not about asking God to bless your plans. It's about surrendering your plans and stepping into what He already blessed. That's where stability comes from. That's where peace lives. That's where the pressure lifts, because now you're building with God, not apart from Him. Self-made success tends to elevate ego. It tells you, look what I did. Look how hard I worked. Look how far I've come. And while there's nothing wrong with acknowledging your effort, when you take full credit, you also take full responsibility for maintaining it. That means when things go wrong, and they eventually will, you don't just feel disappointed, you feel defeated. Because your identity is tied to the outcome, not the one who gave you the opportunity. Divine alignment, on the other hand, brings a different posture. It keeps you humble, grateful, and dependent, not in weakness, but in wisdom. It allows you to work hard, strive for excellence, and steward your calling well, but always under the covering of God's guidance. You stop building towers like Babel that glorify self and start building altars that glorify Him. You understand that success is not just about income, its impact. It's about obedience. It's about legacy. There's a difference between fruit and noise. A lot of self-made success is loud, but it's empty. It's all optics, no substance. Divine alignment produces fruit that remains. It may not always come with applause, but it comes with anointing. It may not trend on social media, but it transforms lives. And when the storms come, and they always do, you won't be shaken, because what's built with God stands through pressure, through criticism, through delay, through uncertainty. People who chase success without alignment often find themselves out of position. They gain influence but lose integrity. They gain followers but lose peace. They gain recognition but lose connection with God, with purpose, with themselves. That's why divine alignment isn't just a luxury. It's a necessity. You weren't designed to navigate life, relationships, or purpose alone. You were designed to walk in partnership with your Creator. True success is sustainable, significant, and surrendered. It's not just about climbing the ladder. It's about making sure the ladder is leaning against the right wall. Divine alignment ensures that what you build doesn't just prosper. It multiplies, blesses, and points others back to the source. Self-made success tells you, you don't need anyone. Divine alignment reminds you, you can't do this without God. One leads to pressure. The other leads to peace. One puts you in control. The other places you under covering. One is loud but unstable. The other may be quiet but unshakable. And that's the difference between building something impressive for a moment and building something eternal for a lifetime. Above daily connection with God is your strategic advantage. In a world obsessed with hacks, shortcuts, and systems to get ahead, people overlook the most powerful, reliable, and effective advantage available to them: consistent time in the presence of God. It's not just about checking a spiritual box or going through a religious routine. It's about tapping into the wisdom, clarity, and strength that only come from daily alignment with the source. Success doesn't start with strategy. It starts with surrender. Before you open your calendar, before you open your email, before you open your mouth, you need to open your heart to God. Because when you start your day in His presence, you get insight that no podcast, planner, or productivity app can give you. God sees what you can't see. He knows the people who will cross your path, the decisions you'll have to make, the opportunities that look good but are actually distractions. Daily connection gives you discernment to navigate all of it. This isn't just about spiritual nourishment. It's about supernatural guidance. When you're connected to God daily, you don't react to life. You respond with wisdom. You're not driven by emotion. You're led by truth. You're not relying on guesswork. You're moving with revelation. That's a strategic edge no competitor can match. Because while others are trying to predict trends, you're being led by the one who already knows the end from the beginning. Daily connection is where clarity lives. It's where confusion gets quiet. It's where your anxiety meets His peace. When you skip this connection, you might still be productive, but you won't be purposeful. You might still make progress, but you won't be operating in power, because your real strength isn't in your hustle. It's in your hearing. And you can't hear clearly when you're not tuned in. Some people treat prayer and time in the Word like a last resort. They go to God when everything else breaks down. But the ones who walk in consistent authority, clarity, and peace, they've made that connection a daily discipline. It's not emotional, it's intentional. They don't wait to feel like it. They show up because they know their life depends on it. You can tell when someone's been with God. They carry a different peace. They make different decisions. They handle pressure differently. That's not personality. It's presence. That's not natural. It's supernatural. And it only comes from consistency. You don't get this advantage with a once-a-week check-in. You get it when you make Him your daily source. This kind of connection also builds resilience. When challenges come, and they will, you're not scrambling to find your footing. You're already rooted. When others are reacting in fear, you're responding in faith. When doors close, you don't panic, you pivot. Not because you have all the answers, but because you're connected to the one who does. Daily connection means you're never navigating anything alone. It also gives you a filter. Not every opportunity is a blessing. Not every open door is from God. Daily time with it helps you filter the good from the God ordained. It helps you say no to what's urgent so you can say yes to what's important. It gives you the boldness to walk away from things that look right but feel wrong in your spirit. That's discernment, and it's a byproduct of connection. People spend thousands on coaching, courses, and conferences trying to gain a competitive edge, and those things can be helpful, but nothing will elevate your life like a consistent relationship with God. It's not hype, it's alignment. It's not magic, it's maturity. And it's available to anyone who will prioritize it. This is your anchor. This is your compass. This is your secret weapon. Daily connection with God won't just change how you pray. It will change how you think, lead, decide, and live. Because the more you connect, the more you become who you were created to be. Not by force, but by flow. Your identity is secured in who God says you are, not what the world says you need to be. That truth will set you free from the pressure to perform, compare, and conform. We live in a culture that constantly tries to shape our identity. through trends, opinions, algorithms, and expectations. You're told to hustle harder, look a certain way, chase a certain lifestyle, and define yourself by your status, your followers, or your success. But all of that is fragile. Because if the world gives it to you, the world can take it away. Identity rooted in culture is unstable. It changes with the season, the crowd, or the platform. One moment you're celebrated, the next you're canceled. One moment you're trending, the next you're forgotten. That's what happens when your sense of self is built on what people think. But when your identity is rooted in what God says about you, it doesn't matter who validates you or who rejects you. You stop living for approval and start living from assurance. God's word says you are chosen, loved, equipped, empowered, forgiven, and set apart. It's not hype. That's truth. And when you build your identity on that foundation, you become unshakable. You're no longer defined by your mistakes, your past, your status, or your bank account. You're defined by the one who created you with intention and purpose. When your identity is secure in God, comparison loses its grip. You stop measuring your worth by someone else's highlight reel. You stop trying to keep up with people who are just as insecure as you were pretending to be. You realize you're not called to copy. You're called to walk in your own assignment. That kind of confidence doesn't come from ego. It comes from identity. This doesn't mean you stop growing or striving for excellence. It means you stop striving for acceptance. You're already accepted. You're already enough. Not because of what you've done, but because of who He is. And when that truth sinks deep into your spirit, it changes how you walk, how you work, how you show up, and how you see other people. This is how you break free from performance-based living. Because when you think you have to earn your value, you'll exhaust yourself trying to prove something God already settled. But when you know you're loved before you succeed, when you know you're seen before you shine, when you know you're valuable before anyone claps for you, that's where true peace comes from. That's where power lies. When your identity is in God, failure doesn't define you. Delay doesn't disqualify you. Criticism doesn't destroy you. You're anchored. You can take risks. You can step out. You can lead boldly. Not because you're perfect, but because you're positioned. You're not living to build an image. You're living to fulfill a calling. The world will try to mold you, sell to you, distract you, and pull you in every direction. But when you know who you are in God, you can stand firm while everyone else is shifting. You don't have to blend in to belong. You don't have to water down your values to be accepted. You don't have to shrink to make other people comfortable. You're not for everyone. And that's okay. You're here for purpose, not popularity. Every time you go back to what God says about you, you get recalibrated. You get reminded. You get refocused. That's how you stay centered in a chaotic world. That's how you lead with peace in a culture addicted to performance. Because your identity isn't rented. It's rooted, not in feelings, not in feedback, but in unchanging truth. When you center your life around God, everything changes. Not because your circumstances are perfect, but because your foundation is unshakable. You stop living for temporary applause and start building for eternal impact. You stop chasing identity and start walking in authority. This isn't about religion alignment. It's about waking up every day, knowing who you are, why you're here, and who you belong to. The world will try to pull you in every direction, but when your life is anchored in God, you don't move with the culture. You move with purpose. Don't settle for a life that looks successful but feels empty. Build something eternal. Live from the source. Let not just be part of your life. Make Him the center of it. Because when He is, you don't just survive. You lead, you grow, and you thrive with clarity, conviction, and divine confidence.